My name is Michelle Jordan, and I'm president of the League of Women Voters of Evanston. Welcome to a forum for candidates running for the upcoming election for mayor of the city of Evanston. The mayor serves a 4-year term. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization dedicated to promoting the active and informed participation of citizens in government. We sponsor these events as a service to the community. The League of Women Voters neither endorses nor opposes candidates for public office. We thank the City of Evanston for providing the space and for the services for today's forum. Our moderator today is Gilda Carew. She's been a member of the League of Women Voters since 1976, when she joined in Ocean County, New Jersey. She's been a member of the League of Women Voters of Arlington Heights, Mount Prospect, Buffalo Grove area since the early 1980s, and has served as president and in several other positions. Gilda is the daughter of refugees from Estonia and is currently the deacon pastor of the First Estonian Evangelical Lutheran Church of Chicago. She is also a retired federal employee and attorney and served as a mediator for the Chicago Federal Executive Board. Gilda will review now the rules and introduce the candidates. Thank you.
And thank you, Michelle. Good morning, and I'm really glad to see so many engaged citizens here for this forum. The rules were given to the candidates, and they're also posted outside, but this forum will be for 45 minutes, where we will have the 2-minute opening statements from each candidate, and then we will have 30 minutes for questions. The questions were requested and submitted in advance via internet and reviewed by the League. The candidates will have up to a minute and a half to answer each question. We have 2 timekeepers here who will hold up signs showing 30 seconds left, 15 seconds left, and stop. And we ask the candidates when they hold up the stop sign to please stop talking, cut your sentence short, whatever you're doing. The candidates will open, and they're seated alphabetically, so they are Daniel Biss and Jeff Barini, and they will be alternating answering the questions so that one will answer one question first, the other will answer the next question first, like that. And the opening statements and the closing statements will also be reversed. So I'm just trying to see what else we have here. Important things for the audience: turn off your phones or put them into do not disturb or airplane mode, whatever, but just make sure they don't ring. We don't want to hear do 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 whatever in the middle here.
That's my ringtone.
There's no flash photography or photos of the audience allowed, and we ask for no interruptions, either pro, con, whatever. We'd like you to please sit silently, listen, and not be yo-yoing up and down. If you have to leave, fine, but please keep that to a minimum. So with that, I would like to start the forum. And our first opening statement for 2 minutes will be given by Mr. Daniel Biss.
Thank you very much, Ms. Carew. Thank you to the League for hosting this forum. By the way, though the League doesn't support or oppose candidates for public office, they have been an extraordinary ally in supporting issues that matter in this community, and I want to thank you for your continued engagement throughout these last 4 years. My name is Daniel Biss. I have the honor of serving as mayor of Evanston, and I'm here today in my capacity as a candidate for re-election. I've been thinking a lot about the circumstances of these last 4 years. I was up here taking the oath of office in May of 2021, having just been vaccinated. We still were in the midst of a pandemic. Our children were still doing school from home. We were still losing residents. We lost over 100 Evanstonians. 2 months later, we learned about a terrible scandal of sexual misconduct among lakefront employees of the city. that resulted in a tremendous amount of needed change at the city, and frankly, a lot of dominoes fell, and at this point now, 4 years later, we have a completely different senior team at the city, different city manager, 2 different deputy city managers, and a number of different department directors. So a lot of these last 4 years have been about creating stability, working through turmoil and crisis, establishing a city government that's functional and has an ethic of excellence in problem solving and collaboration, and terrific public services. Simultaneously, we've been working on a series of ambitious policy issues, big progress on public safety reform, on affordable housing, on climate action, on making Evanston safer, on economic revitalization. And so simultaneously, we've been working hard on stabilizing and improving the quality of the governance while doing ambitious transformational policy. I'm proud of that progress, and in this moment, I see the urgency of moving forward with ambition for our government and skill and excellence for this moment.
Thank you. Our next opening statement for 2 minutes, Mr. Jeffrey Barini.
Thank you. I'm Jeff Barini. I've lived here in Evanston for 34 years. I moved here in 1990 with my late wife, Rocky, and our son, Ted. Ted has cerebral palsy, and we'd been attending school for little children because it was the inclusive preschool that we could find in the area. So driving from Logan Square up to here for 3 years. And we met many great people and fell in love with the city and the beautiful lakefront and its diversity here, and decided to move. And so we spent 30 plus years in South Evanston. My background is corporate and nonprofit leadership. I was a board co-chair here at the Center for Independent Futures, right here in Evanston, nonprofit that supports adults with disabilities. And that was after I retired in 2016. And then I became board president at Arts of Life, another organization that supports artists with disabilities. And I've put my leadership skills to good use in both of those arenas. At McDonald's, I frequently had to work across departments to build budgets, to build support, to build teams, and to make things work. We did that most notably in the creation of a global asset management system, which required acquiring support and, most importantly, funding from all around the world to make that work, and we did so successfully. At Arts of Life, I had to reorganize the board and was able to weather a financial crisis there, and so did that very successfully too. I know I can put those skills to use here in Evanston, so that's why I'm running, to put residents' needs and interests first, to be a voice for residents, and to clarify and to bring better transparency, I think, to government. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll start with the questions, and the first question will be answered first by Mr. Barini. And the question is, how would you describe the role of the mayor in Evanston's council manager form of government? You have a minute and a half.
Okay. I would say that the role of the mayor here is to set a tone and expectation, not only for the city council, but for government in general and amongst the city. The mayor sets the agenda, and that's a literal power that they have. But there has to be an element of team building, certainly, and unification with that, not in thought. It's important that every council member represent their ward, strenuously, but also to bring rigor to the role, to question what's there, and to always represent the residents of Evanston. So the mayor is responsible for setting that tone and for making sure that people are working together here in Evanston. Beyond that, it's being the point of contact primarily for the city manager, and also then holding the city manager accountable for the results, the operations, the activities that go on by staff. So I think that the mayor has a leadership role and needs to be a team builder and unifier in that role.
Thank you. Mr. Biss?
Yeah, thank you. I see this job as really having two distinct components. The one is as the chair of the city council, so setting agendas, working with the council, leading the legislative process in accordance with the priorities of the community and the input that we receive from residents. The other really is as the public face of the organization and the kind of hub who's able to interact with everyone. So part of that is being the person who residents with concerns come to, and hearing from stakeholders, working with institutions in the community, whether they're nonprofits like the League, or educational institutions, whether public or private, or businesses. Part of it's working with layers of other government. On many of the things that we're most excited about having achieved, we couldn't have done them alone without help from Cook County, without help from the state of Illinois, without partnership with our federal legislators. And I'm proud to have the support of our whole state and federal and county delegation here, because those partnerships are pivotal to making sure that we can actually achieve what this community wants. And finally, the mayor is the key person in contact with the city manager, exerting a sense of accountability and excellence over the organization to ensure that we're performing at a level that the residents expect and deserve.
Thank you. Our second question will be answered first by Mr. Biss, and the question is, are you in favor of eliminating single-family residential zoning and allowing up to fourplex housing units? Why or why not? And how would you address concerns on both sides of the issue? You have a minute and a half.
So this is referring to the Envision Evanston 2045 project, which is a really, really pivotal opportunity for our community. It's an opportunity for us to work on the housing crisis that is not only engulfing Evanston, but engulfing our entire country and that we see across the country. It's an opportunity to work on our climate and sustainability goals, on our revitalization of business districts in the wake of the pandemic, on expanding our tax base so that property taxes can be brought under control, and by the way, that enrollment in District 65 can come back up to where it needs to be. So this is a pivotal project. We are now well into it, but there's much work left to do, and we've delayed the consideration by council of the zoning specifically because we want to make sure that the whole community has time to give input and to share thoughts and to ensure that we wind up with a product that works in every neighborhood. So I say all that to say I do not see my role here as dictating a specific outcome. That said, to the question, I think diversity of housing stock and socioeconomic diversity in all neighborhoods is a pivotal goal for our whole community. And so changing the single-family zoning so as to allow missing middle opportunities, duplexes like the one that I live in just around the corner from R1 zoning, is pivotal, and I enthusiastically support that.
Thank you. Mr. Borini?
Thank you. I am not in favor of blanket upzoning or one-size-fits-most zoning, as has been discussed. I think some of the commentary we've heard from many of the citizens regards the varied character of neighborhoods throughout Evanston. This is widely acknowledged. We have a very urban core. We have much more residential areas, and those differ as well, too, along Central Street, Main Street, and different neighborhoods. And so any zoning, I think, needs to start with that, what's there, and see about if we're going to add, and that's if we're going to add residences there, that they can fit with the neighborhood. Some neighborhoods can certainly take on a duplex, maybe a triplex. I think it's far rarer that fourplexes could be there, maybe on corner lots or something like that. But those, I think, have to be thought about quite judiciously. I think also that any change in zoning needs to be gradual, so 1 or 2 units to begin, and then maybe move into something broader. But it's also unfortunate that we're even talking about zoning at this point. We should be focusing on the comprehensive plan as the better order of things, and then talk about zoning. So let's finish the comprehensive plan and do a great job with that first.
Thank you. The third question will be answered first by Mr. Borini, and the question is, Evanston has declared itself a welcoming city and recently updated its ordinance to close loopholes. How do you see this affecting the community?
I think first and foremost that it's a reflection of the very genuine and authentic belief that Evanstonians have about welcoming immigrants and the new people to our city. And so I'm glad that we've strengthened that. I'm glad that we will continue, and certainly as mayor, I would support all of that 100%. As always, we need to be looking for what else we might be able to do to be welcoming and to support immigrants, particularly as they are being assailed now from Washington. And we could consider possibly doing a legal defense fund for them. So one of the things we could do right now is perhaps engage an RFP to see if we can have some legal defense on tap, should that be necessary for the residents in our city who are, come under legal stress. Excuse me.
Thank you. Mr. Biss?
This is a really scary time. The threats coming at individual communities inside of Evanston and across the country, the threats coming at our core values, the threats coming at potentially our revenues from the Trump administration are extraordinary, they're unprecedented, and they're dangerous. And so we have a responsibility to act as a bulwark. In a moment of choosing across the country when communities and institutions are trying to figure out, are they going to stand up or are they going to preemptively concede, we have a responsibility to stand up for our values. And so I am proud that shortly before this new president took office, we strengthened our Welcoming City Ordinance in collaboration with the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights and their technical expertise and our internal staff, establishing the strongest such ordinance in the state and potentially the country that I think should be a model for other communities. We're not stopping there. We're now working on policies to, for example, protect data relative to reproductive rights that could be critical in this new moment. We have to figure out all the steps that we can take to protect this community. And I'm proud that we're putting time and energy into it, and I'm proud of the partnerships that we've established to make sure that we're on the front lines. I think that 50 years from now, people are going to look back and ask, what did we do in this moment? And I am going to make sure that Evanston did everything possible to stand up and be who we are.
Thank you. Our next question will be answered first by Mr. Biss, and the question is, there is an argument to be made that Northwestern's property tax exemption may not extend to the new Ryan Field, as much of it is designed for non-educational purposes. Are you willing to spend legal resources to investigate this? Mr. Biss?
I will investigate everything. I would say that to a common sense person, the idea that a football stadium with concerts is eligible for a property tax exemption is patently absurd. I think we can all agree on that. However, all the legal advice that I've gotten has indicated that they have a strong property tax protection. And frankly, before I was mayor, the city spent millions and millions of dollars on a speculative legal effort that turned up nothing whatsoever. And so I think it's important for us to be aggressive and willing to think about everything, but also realistic about what's likely to be successful. And I'm really, really proud that given the confines that we were handed by the charter of Northwestern that was accepted by the state of Illinois, by the constitutional protection and the statutory strengthening of those protections that nonprofit educational institutions are granted, that we negotiated to get more from Northwestern by a wide margin than the city has received in the previous entire history of both institutions. That's a win. That's important. And it's a foundation for us to continue to go back and do better and get more. I'm proud of that. I think we're going to be able to do even more moving forward.
Thank you. Mr. Barini?
Yes, that's the answer. Yes, we should investigate whether or not we could see about a legal challenge to Ryan Field being considered tax-exempt property. As the mayor just noted, this is not the first time this question has come up, and there is certainly a legal argument to be made on Northwestern's part about this. And regardless, it would be a significant legal challenge for us to go into this. So we best get really good advice if we're going to go in this route. At the same time, it's clear financially, and certainly the belief among citizens that Northwestern is not paying its fair share, regardless of what they just agreed to on the Ryan Field deal. Universities like Harvard and Yale are all paying in excess of $20 million a year to their home communities. So Northwestern needs to be doing more. I think there's opportunities for partnership with them. I think that I don't dismiss for a second, the value that they bring to this city. But at the same time, a strong and vibrant Evanston is in their best interest, and I think we can do better as partners to try to bolster the city's position with them and get some more financial and other help, in-kind help from them moving forward.
Thank you. The next question will be answered first by Mr. Barini, and the question is, council members are obliged to balance the needs of their ward with the entire city. In the same vein, how have you or how will you approach and balance your relationships with individual council members or perceived council member alliances in order to best serve the entire city?
I've mentioned, my team building expertise and experience, and certainly that would come into play by forging certainly relationships with each individual council member, but also as a team, and reminding them continually that we all report to residents. There is an org chart in the city. Residents are at the very top of it. And so, yes, they serve their wards individually, but they serve this community collectively and have a role in that. So keeping that front and center as a cultural item with them, I think is an imperative for the mayor to do. And going forward, we have to really work to get greater input from residents and to, I think, respond to them and be seen to responding to them. So I think holding each other in check as a council is something that we can all do to kind of say, agree on what our deliverables are to the city, and then make sure that we're living up to that individually as council members and collectively as the city council as well. And residents will certainly have to be the judge of that, and they will let both council members and me as the mayor know how we're doing that on a regular basis.
Thank you. Mr. Biss?
Well, that was really something. I think you left out one part, which is that you're in a romantic relationship with a member of city council who's currently running for re-election, which is, in my opinion, an obvious conflict of interest, and one that it's interesting for a candidate who talks primarily about transparency to not mention in a 90-second answer to a question about how to work with and relate to members of city council. I'm honestly stunned. I think it is pivotal to work closely and collaboratively with a sense of independence and distance from all members of city council. I talk with all of them regularly. I try to understand their own priorities, what they see as necessary in their wards, what their values and policy interests are, and what their constituent service needs are. And I try to build majorities. Consensus when possible. Consensus is also often impossible, and so often just majorities to help move forward the priorities that the individual council members see most pivotal to their wards. That involves a lot of relationship building, a lot of give and take, a lot of adjudicating between competing priorities that different council members in different wards have. And I think it's really critical that those relationships be professional and even-handed so that the mayor has the distance necessary to be the adjudicator that we require.
Thank you. The next question is, what should the city do to address violence? Is it doing enough, or are there additional strategies you would recommend? Mr. Biss, you have 1.5 minutes.
Any violence is too much. And so by definition, if there's a gun that is discharged in the city of Evanston, we need to do more. That said, I'm really proud of the progress that we have made, which is seen specifically in the numbers, seen in the decrease in violent crime, the decrease in gun violence that's pivotal. I want to say a word about how we've done that. We've done that with partnerships between police strategies executed by our phenomenal police chief who was hired during the last several years, Shanita Stewart, and non-police strategies. So those two approaches work in tandem, right? So for instance, we brought on the care team. That's an alternative 911 response effort. So when you call 911, the dispatcher can route a call not to the police, but rather to someone perhaps with social work background and lived experience relative to the crisis the person is experiencing. That's outside the police department, but the care team works in tandem with the police department. So that's one example. Another example is a living room that we've brought online, which allows for peer support and de-escalation for individuals experiencing crisis. We've also seen, because I believe of the great leadership of our police chief and also because of a new employment contract for our police department that is more in line with our neighbors, we've seen, instead of losing police officers, which we were when I came into office, we're now rebuilding the department, adding headcount, and I think that is also pivotal to enabling us to provide the public safety service that this community deserves and requires.
Thank you. Mr. Borini?
Thank you. This question came up yesterday at the Mather Forum, by the way. And I think what we've seen overall is a general reduction in crime in the city, which is excellent. And we can applaud this, the city's police department for working very hard to fill their roster. I believe they're just a few headcount down now from where their target is. And so they've really done a lot of work to try to bring themselves back up to full strength, and maybe some of the reduction in crime is a reflection of that. At the same time, there are some opportunities, and these have come up in coffee, so that we had, particularly with black residents, that they're concerned that crime is not always treated the same throughout the city, that there is a perception occasionally that crime, particularly in the Fifth Ward, is just something that's going to happen. And they want to make sure that criminals there are prosecuted and that the process are followed with as much rigor as they are throughout the city. So I think we still have some opportunity where we can go there. There's always room for improvement, and that's one thing that we need to address.
Thank you. Mr. Biss?
I already responded.
I'm sorry.
You can go again.
How was that memorable, huh?
Okay, our next question is, what should the city do to promote economic development? Are current activities adequate? And if not, what specific strategies do you propose? And it will be answered first by Mr. Borini.
I would say that given the state of downtown Evanston in particular, we can certainly agree that no, the activity is not sufficient, that the city's economic state is not where we want it to be, and we need to do more to advance this. So we need to look at a plan that's going to be a long-term plan about how to revive downtown Evanston, but also our other commercial districts as well, not just downtown. This is going to involve perhaps incentives to bring in new businesses. We must support the businesses that are there better than we do right now and find ways to reduce their costs. And I think what we need to do also is address everything in the downtown area holistically, that nothing stands alone. And there, of course, the financial makeup of the city, but also things like public safety, walkability, our climate issues. They all have to be taken into account at the same time. So we need to be able to address everything at once. And one of the things I'd like to do is put together a task force that involves our staff and our local resident experts, business people for certain, residents downtown, to examine this and see what kind of ideas we can come up with that we know that will work for Evanston. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Biss?
Well, there's no question that our downtown needs work, and that's one of my top priorities both now and should I be lucky enough to be reelected. I mean, let's just kind of look at what we have. We have, a lot of good things happening on Main Street, on Dempster, on Central Street, and we often hear about how downtown Wilmette is doing well also, but downtown Evanston lags behind. What's the difference? The difference is that downtown Evanston has lots of office buildings. The way that downtown Evanston's economic equilibrium worked until the pandemic was it relied on office workers who'd go out for lunch, they'd grab coffee or do an errand on the way back to the L or the Metro after work. They're still mostly gone. Those offices are still far below the population they were at until the pandemic, and so there's lost buying power. and we need to replace that lost buying power. Part of that is residential development. That's part of why we're talking about increased residential density in our downtown. That will help with the businesses. Part of that is events that bring people downtown. The Northlight Theater is coming back to downtown Evanston. That's a huge win culturally and economically. Other cultural events are pivotal. Things like the downtown concerts that happen on Thursday evening in the summer, or the folk festival that we had on the lakefront. We need to bring people from other communities to Evanston because they want to spend time here. And finally, we need the built environment of downtown to be inviting and attractive so that people want to congregate there and spend time together there. And that requires the right kinds of planning, zoning, and infrastructure developments.
Thank you. The next question is, what measures are you willing to take to get the waste transfer station to relocate from Evanston? And how will you protect vulnerable communities from being disproportionately impacted by environmental inequities? Mr. Biss?
Yeah, this is a long-standing outrage in our community. It's one that I'm deeply concerned about, and my predecessor was deeply concerned about, and his predecessor was deeply concerned about. And we need to take a holistic approach to the question of environmental justice. And so one of the things that we've done is pursuant to the environmental justice resolution that was passed by City Council before I took office. That was a good thing that they did, I believe, in 2019. We've now embarked on our investigation of the full environmental justice issues that exist around the city to ensure that not just with a waste transfer station, but things like access to green space, mobility, access to other, to air quality even. We need to do a full assessment of the ways in which decisions that have been made in this community for generations have resulted in a basic gap between the quality of air that people breathe that's correlated with race, between the health outcomes that are correlated with race and geography in Evanston, and we need to take every action possible. And so I'm prepared to do whatever can be done. I will say that my predecessors consistently ran into walls and found they simply did not have the authority to make that happen, but there's nothing I'm not willing to try, because environmental justice is really at the center of what we are most committed to in this community.
Thank you. Mr. Barini?
Thank you. You know, the waste transfer station has been a problem, as the mayor noted, for many, many, many years. And I suspect that, like taxation at Ryan Field, you know, that people and the legal, you know, staff here at the city has looked at many, many options about how to try to move them on. So I don't know the history of all of those, just that they've been done. And so we should continue to pursue every legal avenue. I don't know if there's some way we could induce them to go to another way, somewhere else perhaps, carrot rather than stick approach to them to get them to move along. But they are a problem, and they've been a problem for a while. And they certainly relate to the topic of you know, environmental justice here in the city. And so when we look at our comprehensive plan that we're working on, that's an element that needs to be truly baked into that. I think, again, we talk about holistic approach to these things. We have to be able to address them all at once, that whatever we do, whether it's on the environmental front or else, that we're not harming, you know, our communities in doing this. So we need to be careful. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is, what specific strategies would you propose to preserve affordable housing and to create affordable housing in all areas of Evanston? Mr. Borini?
The first thing I would do, I think, to address the issue of putting affordable housing in all areas is I would amend the inclusionary housing ordinance that was just passed, which did a great job of increasing to 15% the amount of housing that new development is responsible for, that dramatically increases the pricing that they have to pay to get out of it, but reduces to zero the amount that they actually have to build, so that a developer could say, you know, I choose not to, and there's going to be a big penalty, but I'm going to just pass that along to my renters anyway, so that affects affordability. So I would love to see us amend that and make them actually build the property. Beyond that, I think the city needs to do things like invest in land trusts where we can build housing that will be there permanently. We'll need to partner with other developers to do that. But in addition, we can look at things like low equity co-ops, which reduce the bar for people to get into some housing. We could look at things like rent-to-own options. We could look at things that provide perhaps down payment support with this ability of the city to provide a loan to people to get their down payment together, or even first and last month rent for renters, if we could find a way to support that as a short-term loan process.
Thank you. Mr. Biss?
It's a great question, and I believe we have an affordability crisis in this city, and therefore we have to do a number of things, and I'm going to try to explain as many of them as possible. But I want to first address something that Jeff just said, because respectfully, you got it exactly backwards. So the inclusionary housing ordinance says that when new, relatively large developments occur, a percentage of those units have to be affordable. And that does a great job of making sure that we have some affordable units where there are larger developments. It exactly doesn't put affordable units everywhere. It just puts them in the densest parts of town. And that's why this amendment says, hey, guess what? We will let developers opt out of that and give us a giant amount of money in our affordable housing fund, because then we can use that affordable housing fund to put affordable housing everywhere. It's exactly, precisely a change designed to guarantee there's affordable housing everywhere, not just in the densest areas. Okay, so that's one thing we've done already. I think improving that is an important next step. Using city property to develop affordable housing, because that's when we're not at the mercy of the market. We're doing it on lot 1 on South Boulevard now. I think there's a really exciting opportunity potentially in the building that we're sitting in right now. Continuing to bring in more funding, not only through the inclusionary housing ordinance, but also through outside partners like federal partners and, for instance, Northwestern to our affordable housing fund is critical. And then zoning changes have to be a part of the solution too.
Thank you. The 10th and final question is, how do you think the city should prepare for and react to the loss of federal funds if that should occur under the current administration? Mr. Biss?
Yeah, it's a great and terrifying question. It's something that I've been focused on since, I forgot if it's November 6th or if I was too busy mourning then and it was November 7th. But I was talking with our staff the week of the election to begin preparing for these eventualities. We actually have on our city council agenda the day after tomorrow a presentation from staff about what they know. So I would encourage everyone to tune in. What I have to say, though, is that we don't know that much because this administration is being deliberately chaotic. They are acting on purpose to be unpredictable and incomprehensible, and so we've got to be ready for a lot of different things. We have big grants that we believe we are already legally entitled to, over $10 million for climate, $7 million for housing. We want to work to protect those. We have ongoing federal funding for infrastructure and lead pipe replacement and community development block grant. We are working with partners, including partners in Republican-leaning cities and partners in cities that have Republican congressional representatives to build coalitions to protect those revenues that all municipalities need. I work with colleagues from across the country to do that. We're ready to go to court. In the previous Trump administration, we sued and we were part of successful lawsuits to protect revenues when they sought to take them for reasons of values. But I want to end here and say that though we have to be ready for everything, we also cannot preemptively concede. We have to stick up for our values. In a moment like this, we have to stand up and be counted and not allow a bully to change what we believe in.
Thank you. Mr. Borini?
Thank you. I applaud the efforts of the current administration and particularly city staff to prepare for what, again, is a moving target, from the chaos in Washington. And one of the things I think we need to do, in addition to what's been done, is to make sure that our budget is as rock solid as we possibly can, that the biggest threat and impact from Washington will be financial. And so knowing where every dollar is, knowing that we're buttoned up as possible, knowing what every project is going to do and what the possible ramifications of loss of those funds might be is imperative, that we are solid as we move forward. That's what allows us to continue to do good and to make sure we've got money in the right places where we need it to both resist Washington and to keep our own operations running as smoothly as possible and to protect our residents to the fullest extent as we can.
Thank you. We'll now move to the 2-minute closing statements. And as I stated earlier, they'll be given in reverse order of the opening statements. So we will start with Jeff Borini. You have 2 minutes for a closing statement.
Thank you. Thank all of you for coming today. Thank you for this opportunity and your time for everyone. I love Evanston. I'm committed to delivering a government that listens and responds to residents. As mayor, I will seek best practices from cities across the nation to address topics like climate, like housing, like zoning, and more. I'll put my corporate and nonprofit leadership skills to work to deliver solutions. I'll embrace policies to revitalize our downtown and strengthen our economic districts. I'll insist on tighter, clear budgeting that ensures that every dollar is being used responsibly and effectively. And as I just said, that's not only good policy, that will be essential as we face an erratic and vengeful Washington. To make our community thrive, though, we must start by rebuilding trust in our own government right here. That starts with listening to all residents, more actively gathering their feedback, and then incorporating what has been heard. Our own Charles Gates Dawes said, "We need not fear the truth, only the failure to tell it completely." On issues like Ryan Field, the 909 Davis lease, the Wesley Apartments, and the initial rush to complete Envision Evanston, too often decisions seem to have been made offstage and without sufficient public vetting. The city's business is the residents' business, and the results improve with transparency. Finally, I know what hard work is. As mayor, I can assure you that no one will work harder for the residents and businesses of Evanston. Let's build a better Evanston together. Please support me on April 1st. Jeff Borini. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Daniel Biss will give his closing statement. You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks. I think the attendance at this forum already says something that we already knew about this community, but that it's important to continually remind ourselves. The joy of this job is working with people from all different parts of town with all different points of view and all different knowledge, backgrounds, and all different passions, and trying to knit that together to move us forward, to figure out how to say yes, to figure out how to do something that might be tough or politically controversial, but matters to achieve our key objectives. In the next 4 years, should I have the honor of, again, being able to serve as your mayor, the top focuses need to be affordability, downtown revitalization, and budget stabilization as we walk through difficult budgetary times. And these are complicated issues. They're issues that require knowledge of the details of how government works. They're issues that require knowledge of all the different stakeholders across our community and how this layer of government interacts with our county and state and federal partners, bringing in resources from other places to allow us to achieve our ambitious objectives. This is a hard time. It's a complicated time. It's not just a complicated town, it's a complicated moment in the country, in the world. And in my opinion, that moment calls out for experience and knowledge. I think about what I've learned during the course of these last 4 years, how much more effective I am in leading the city now than I was 4 years ago. And in a time like this, in a time when we are under threat in so many ways, it would be such a privilege and an honor to be able to bring those hard-earned skills to lead us forward during the next 4 years. I appreciate your interest. I ask for your support. And vote for me or not, if I'm lucky enough to win, I ask for your continued engagement during these next 4 years, because I know that only when we all work together with optimism and hope can we achieve what this city deserves. Thank you again.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank both candidates, Daniel Biss and Jeff Borini, for their thoughtful responses and for keeping within the time frames. This was great. Sometimes we have people go over. So I'd like to invite the audience to give our candidates a round of applause, please. I'd also like to let you know that this forum is being recorded and will be available on the Evanston League's website at LWVE.org until Election Day on April 1st. It's really gratifying to see basically a standing room only crowd here, so your engagement is wonderful. Don't forget to vote. Either you can vote early or on April 1st or by mail, but your mail-in request has to be submitted to the clerk by St. Patrick's Day, March 17th. So if you want to vote by mail, that is an option also. So again, thank you all for coming. Thank you for not having cell phones on and for really being such an engaged audience. This forums will continue throughout the day today, so feel free to stay. And the candidates, I believe, will be out in the vestibule and will be willing to talk to you if you have any questions or concerns you'd like to address to them directly. So again, thank you very much and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you all.